Most of the pain that cuts the deepest never comes from the world. It comes from the mind interpreting the world. There are moments when a single silence feels like abandonment, when a short reply feels like rejection, when the smallest shift in someone's tone ignites a storm inside the chest. The event itself is neutral, yet the mind becomes the author of a tragedy that never truly occurred. This is why suffering grows even when nothing has touched the body. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and he was right. The world wounds far less than the stories the mind invents. People disappoint, circumstances shift, words cut, but the damage only becomes real when the mind accepts the wound as truth. Nothing and no one controls that inner gate except the one who owns it. This video reveals 7 Stoic truths that dissolve unnecessary suffering and rebuild a mind that cannot be broken again. 1. Pain comes from interpretation, not from people. Nothing hurts until the mind decides it should. Silence means nothing until the mind names it rejection. A cold expression carries no threat until the mind paints it as danger. A careless comment is just sound until the mind shapes it into a wound. The space between the event and the interpretation is where suffering is born. Stoic wisdom lives inside this space. The true battlefield is the meaning you create, not the moment you face. Someone can ignore, misunderstand, criticize, or judge, but the impact reaches the heart only if the mind opens its gate. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the soul is colored by thought, not circumstance. When thought is fearful, the world feels sharp. When thought is steady, even sharpness softens. Different people experience the same moment in completely different ways because each carries a different story inside. One spirals, another remains calm. One personalizes everything, another observes without absorbing. The difference is not outside, but within. Reality does not harm you. The story you attach to it does. A shifting tone becomes a personal attack only when the mind is already wounded. A delay becomes proof of abandonment only when the mind fears being forgotten. An opinion becomes a verdict only when the mind forgets its own worth. Stoic practice teaches a quiet but powerful discipline. Pause before assigning meaning. See the event without the added story. Let facts stand alone instead of letting imagination distort them. This is not emotional numbness. It is emotional clarity. It is choosing to meet reality as it is, not as fear imagines it. When interpretation becomes conscious, pain loses authority. A trained mind refuses to create tragedies out of ordinary moments. It does not collapse under shifting moods or careless words. It stands firm, choosing clarity over chaos. In that quiet strength, the world loses its ability to wound. 2. Emotional overreaction is self-inflicted harm. Most wounds are not delivered by others, but triggered from within. A message arrives later than expected, and the heart jumps to conclusions. A change in tone sparks fear that something is wrong. A misunderstanding unfolds, and the mind rushes to defend itself before anything is truly threatened. The storm does not begin outside, it rises from reactions formed inside. Overreaction is the mind racing ahead of reality. It invents threats, magnifies small moments, and layers meaning where none existed. A simple exchange becomes a crisis, not because of what happened, but because of the emotional weight the mind places on it. This is how people harm themselves without realizing they are holding the blade. What the mind reacts to is rarely the present moment. It is the unhealed history behind it. A raised eyebrow awakens old insecurities. A delayed reply echoes past abandonment. A neutral statement feels hostile when unresolved wounds still live inside. The reaction belongs less to now and more to memories the present accidentally touched. Stoic clarity begins with recognizing this truth. When emotion rises sharply, it reveals something about the inner world, not the outer one. The reaction is a message, not a verdict. It asks for understanding, not explosion. It invites a pause before harm multiplies. The pause is where self-protection begins. A breath creates space. Silence restores perspective. Distance allows truth to appear without distortion. Most emotional damage happens because the mind responds instantly, without reflection, without separating the event from the internal narrative rushing to complete it. A calm mind does not ignore emotion. It honors it without surrendering to it. It observes the rise, names it, and chooses how to meet it. In this choice lies the difference between harming oneself and healing oneself. Overreaction hands power to the world. Restraint takes it back. When emotion dictates behavior, anyone can control the inner state simply by triggering it. A careless comment can ruin an entire day. A stranger's attitude can break confidence. A disappointing moment can spiral into self-doubt, but none of this is inevitable. Control returns the moment a person refuses to let the first emotion become the final response. Stoic discipline is not coldness, it is mastery. It teaches the mind to sit with discomfort without becoming defined by it. It turns raw feeling into information rather than identity. It transforms the impulse to react into the wisdom to respond. When the inner storm settles, nothing outside can shake the foundation. A steady soul cannot be manipulated. It cannot be provoked. It cannot be thrown into chaos by moods, misunderstandings, or human imperfection. It meets the world with clarity instead of panic. And in that clarity, emotional wounds no longer find a place to grow. 3. Expectations create emotional pain. The heart breaks more from imagined promises than from real actions. Expectation turns ordinary moments into emotional traps. It creates silent rules for how others should behave, speak, care, respond, or stay. When they fail to meet these unwritten rules, disappointment appears as if a betrayal occurred. Yet the real betrayal comes from expecting people to become versions they never agreed to be. Expectation is the hidden architect of suffering. It paints pictures of how affection should look, how loyalty should remain, how understanding should always appear. When reality does not match that image, pain arrives instantly, not because someone intended harm, but because the mind attached itself to an outcome that never belonged to it. Disappointment is not born from people. It is born from the distance between imagination and truth. Expectation turns relationships into fragile structures. A small change in tone feels like rejection. A moment of silence feels like distance. A temporary distraction feels like fading love. The mind creates pain from nothing more than its desire for certainty. Nothing hurts more than demanding permanence from what is naturally unpredictable. People are allowed to change. They are allowed to struggle, forget, fail, have limits, and not always know how to show care. Expectation denies them this humanity. It insists they must fit the mind's blueprint or risk being labeled as harmful. This pressure suffocates connection and multiplies pain. Stoic wisdom teaches acceptance over assumption. It invites seeing people as they truly are, not as they were imagined to be. It replaces demand with understanding, assumption with observation, craving with presence. When expectation loosens, clarity appears, and emotional wounds begin to heal before they form. Letting go of expectation is not lowering standards. It is freeing the heart from self-inflicted pain. A heart without expectation still loves but does not cling. It still cares but does not demand perfection. It still hopes but does not collapse when life moves differently than planned. It meets people as individuals, not as characters in a story written without their consent. Expectation is a cage. Releasing it is the beginning of emotional freedom. A mind that stops insisting on how things must be becomes strong enough to face things as they are. In that strength, disappointment loses its grip, and relationships become healthier, lighter, and more honest. When expectation fades, pain softens, and the world no longer wounds so easily. 4. You cannot be hurt by what you do not internalize. Nothing from the outside can wound a person who refuses to let it enter. A harsh remark is only noise until the mind accepts it as truth. A judgment carries no weight until the heart absorbs it. Even cruelty loses force when the inner gate remains closed. The world delivers countless impressions, but only those invited inside become pain. The Stoics taught that the mind is sovereign. Events strike like wind, brief and passing, but interpretation anchors them into lasting suffering. When someone criticizes, dismisses, or misunderstands, the impact depends entirely on whether the mind chooses to carry their words. An unguarded mind collects every insult. A disciplined mind lets them fall away. What others say reveals their inner state, not your worth. A bitter person spreads bitterness. An insecure person projects insecurity. An angry person lashes out without awareness. Taking their words personally turns their struggle into your burden. Refusing to internalize them keeps the inner world clean and undisturbed. The mind often reacts out of habit, not clarity. Old wounds make harmless comments feel sharp. Past experiences turn neutral moments into emotional traps. Without awareness, the heart absorbs everything, even what was never meant for it. Learning to pause before accepting any impression breaks this cycle. You are never obligated to adopt someone else's perception of you. Not every opinion deserves space. Not every voice deserves influence. Not every judgment belongs in your identity. When the mind becomes selective, the heart becomes protected. Strength is not resisting the world. It is choosing what enters and what remains outside. Stoic detachment is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is recognizing that external noise does not define internal truth. It is the ability to observe without absorbing. It is the freedom of letting others carry their emotions instead of making them yours. The world loses power the moment you stop allowing it to define you. A person who no longer internalizes negativity becomes unshakable. They hear without absorbing. They see without collapsing. They witness without reshaping their identity around passing judgments. This calm separation builds an inner fortress no one can breach. In that fortress, peace returns. 5. Attachment is the root of emotional collapse. It is not people who break the heart. It is the mind that clings too tightly. Attachment turns affection into dependence and connection into fear. The moment the heart relies on another for stability, every shift in behavior feels like a threat. A delayed reply feels like abandonment. A moment of distance feels like rejection. The pain does not come from what they did, but from what the mind demanded. Attachment is a silent contract no one agreed to sign. The mind builds expectations of constancy, loyalty, attention, reassurance, then suffers when others act according to their nature. People are not fragile because others hurt them. They are fragile because they anchor emotional safety to something that moves. Connection is not the problem. Fearful attachment is. It traps the heart in cycles of hoping, worrying, checking, overthinking, and seeking worth through another's actions. In this loop, even kindness feels unstable, and small changes trigger emotional earthquakes. Stoic philosophy teaches love without possession, care without dependence, closeness without fear. Detachment is not withdrawal. It is releasing the demand that someone else carry responsibility for inner peace. It is loving with an open hand instead of a closed fist. When attachment loosens, clarity rises. Behavior is seen as it is, not as insecurity paints it. Distance becomes a human rhythm, not a threat. Misunderstandings become conversations, not catastrophes. Love grows lighter, freer, and more honest. What the mind clings to is what it fears losing, and fear is the true source of suffering. By releasing the need to hold, the fear of letting go dissolves. By returning emotional responsibility to the self, inner stability grows. By standing firmly alone, a person can finally stand with others without trembling. Detachment is strength. It is the decision to stop building identity around someone else's presence. It is the courage to remain whole even as people come and go. It is the freedom to care deeply without destroying oneself in the process. A heart that no longer clings cannot be broken. It bends without snapping. It adapts without collapsing. It appreciates without possessing. In this quiet strength, the world regains its beauty because the mind no longer demands that anyone stay to keep it from falling apart. 6. Most hurt is accidental. The rest reveals itself through patterns. Most wounds are not created by cruelty, they are created by misunderstanding. The rest are created by behaviors you were meant to notice. People rarely wake up intending to wound another soul. They speak without thinking, react without awareness, forget without malice, and withdraw without meaning harm. Their actions collide with fears, insecurities, and unhealed places within the heart. What was ordinary suddenly feels painful. The hurt appears deliberate, yet its origin is often nothing more than human imperfection meeting human vulnerability. Not every painful moment signals danger. Some are reflections of where the heart is still tender. A distracted conversation awakens the belief of being unimportant. A busy day for someone else triggers the fear of being replaced. A moment of impatience revives memories of wounds carried long before they arrived. The world feels harsh, not because it is harsh, but because old pain shapes how new moments are interpreted. Recognizing this truth dissolves half of suffering immediately. There is a second truth, quieter and sharper. Some wounds are not accidental. They repeat, not through isolated moments, but through consistent patterns that reveal true nature. Words can hide intention. Patterns cannot lie. A pattern is the mirror of character, the echo of who someone truly is. A sincere person may stumble, yet consistency reveals care. An unreliable person may apologize, yet behavior remains unchanged. A manipulative person may charm, yet actions circle back to control. A distant person may speak well, yet presence remains absent again and again. To see the pattern is to see beyond excuses, explanations, and temporary sweetness. Much suffering exists because the heart listens too closely to words and not closely enough to patterns. Words are easy. Patterns demand awareness. Awareness is often avoided because it requires difficult decisions. Stepping back, setting boundaries, letting go, walking away from what the heart hoped would be different. Stoic wisdom calls for the courage to observe instead of react, to study instead of assume, to witness instead of cling. Observation is clarity. It is watching actions without weaving stories around them. It is allowing behavior to speak louder than promises. It is accepting truth even when it conflicts with desire. Clarity frees the heart from hoping someone will become who they are not ready or willing to be. When the heart shifts from reacting to observing, quiet power appears. Small offenses lose weight because they are seen as human error, not personal attack. True harm becomes unmistakable because it repeats with precision. Confusion fades because the mind stops interpreting every moment emotionally. Instead, it reads reality as it is, not as fear imagines. The heart is not protected by walls, but by awareness. Walls block connection. Awareness filters it. Awareness recognizes genuine care even when imperfect and does not invent wounds where none were intended. Awareness detects repeated disrespect without waiting for collapse. Awareness softens unnecessary pain and sharpens necessary truth. A person who understands patterns is never blindsided. They do not fall apart when disappointment arrives because they saw the signs long before the fall. They do not cling to false hope because they learn to see reality beneath emotional fantasy. They do not lose themselves in others' behavior because they know what belongs to them and what does not. Awareness turns accidental hurt into understanding and deliberate hurt into wisdom. The heart becomes steady, no longer shaken by every shift in another's mood. The mind becomes grounded, no longer deceived by gentle words masking destructive behavior. Life becomes clearer because the world reveals itself honestly to those who observe without fear. In that clarity, strength rises. A person becomes unshakable not by avoiding the world, but by understanding it, not by resisting pain, but by recognizing its true source, not by chasing perfection, but by accepting imperfection while refusing patterns that destroy peace. When patterns become visible, pain loses its disguise. Once pain loses disguise, it loses power. 7. Inner strength makes you untouchable. The world does not become kinder, the self becomes stronger. Pain loses power not when life stops hurting, but when the inner world stops breaking every time something shifts. Strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to feel deeply without collapsing. It is quiet confidence that says whatever happens, the core remains intact. This is Stoic resilience. Strength built from within, not granted from outside. Inner strength begins with the ability to stand alone, not in isolation, but in identity. When approval, validation, and constant reassurance are no longer needed, the world's fluctuations stop controlling emotion. A cold message no longer ruins the day. A distant tone no longer feels threatening. A change in behavior no longer shakes the ground beneath the feet. Standing alone does not mean rejecting connection. It means not collapsing when connection shifts. A person who can hold themselves no longer demands others to hold them together. In this balance, love becomes a gift, not a survival tool. Relationships become chosen, not clung to. Boundaries become natural, not dramatic. Inner strength frees both the self and everyone around it. The strongest individuals are not those who feel nothing. They are those who master their inner response to everything. When someone speaks harshly, they do not collapse. When someone leaves, they do not lose themselves. When disappointment arrives, they feel it fully without allowing it to define their identity. Stoic strength is flexible, not rigid. It bends without breaking. It adapts without losing shape. This inner resilience is built through repeated encounters with discomfort, by facing challenges instead of avoiding them, by allowing temporary pain to shape discipline rather than despair, by recognizing that adversity is not punishment, but instruction. Every moment of discomfort becomes a weight that strengthens the inner muscle. Nothing makes a person more powerful than the ability to regulate their own emotions. When the inner world is calm, the outer world loses its power to disturb it. A stable mind cannot be manipulated by guilt, pressure, or emotional games. A steady heart cannot be pulled into chaos by someone else's instability. Self-regulation becomes armor, invisible yet impenetrable. This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means honoring emotion without surrendering control. It means breathing through fear, observing anger before responding, recognizing sorrow without drowning in it. The ability to remain centered during turbulence is among the highest forms of strength. Inner strength also grows from living in alignment with personal values rather than bending for approval. Many people betray themselves to avoid conflict or rejection. They silence their voice, abandon their needs, or play roles that were never theirs. Each act of self-betrayal weakens the foundation. But when values become the compass, decisions grow clear, boundaries grow firm, and self-respect becomes unshakable. A person aligned with their values cannot be pressured into becoming someone they are not. They cannot be guilted into abandoning what matters. They cannot be manipulated by fear of loss. Loyalty to the self becomes the greatest protection. Strength deepens when the inner narrative shifts from "why is this happening to me" to "what is this shaping in me?" Life does not wound to destroy. It challenges to refine. Every disappointment builds understanding. Every setback sharpens perspective. Every emotional struggle deepens wisdom. When the heart sees pain as a sculptor rather than an enemy, breaking becomes impossible. With this mindset, a person moves through life with quiet confidence. They trust their ability to handle whatever arrives. Their calm cannot be imitated. They no longer search for stability in others because they have created it within. Inner strength becomes the ultimate freedom. Freedom from fear of abandonment. Freedom from dependence on validation. Freedom from emotional volatility. Freedom from the need to control outcomes or people. This freedom creates peace, not the fragile peace that depends on perfect conditions, but the solid peace that remains even when uncertainty surrounds everything. A person who is strong inside becomes unpredictable in the best way. Insults do not reach them. Manipulation does not move them. Loss does not destroy them. They respond with intention, not impulse. They choose clarity over chaos, integrity over approval, and self-respect over attachment. When the inner world is fortified, nothing outside can touch it. The self becomes a steady flame in shifting winds. The heart stays grounded even as people come and go. The mind remains clear even when circumstances change without warning. Life continues to test, but the tests no longer break. They build. This is where true power appears, when the world no longer needs to change for peace to exist. When nothing and no one can harm a mind that has learned how to hold itself. Nothing transforms the world more powerfully than transforming the way the inner world responds to it. Pain loses its grip when interpretation becomes conscious. Overreaction becomes restrained. Expectation lightens. The heart stops absorbing what does not belong to it. Strength rises as attachment loosens. Patterns become visible, and emotional stability becomes a daily practice instead of a distant hope. These 7 truths are not theories. They are tools. Each dissolves a layer of unnecessary suffering and returns authority to where it has always belonged. The self becomes untouchable, not by avoiding pain, but by understanding its source and reclaiming control over the meaning assigned to every moment. Carry these ideas into daily life. Practice the pause, observe before absorbing, choose clarity over chaos and self-respect over emotional dependence. Thank you for spending this time strengthening the inner world. May the calm built here guide every step forward. Until the next video, may the mind remain steady, grounded, and impossible to break.